It's September, which means that National Sew a Jelly Roll Day is in just a few days, on September 19th. Now, on September 19th, lots of quilters who participate grab a jelly roll and try to make a quilt in a day, or at least start a quilt. So I thought that this is the perfect opportunity to put together a very fast and easy jelly roll pattern for you guys. Now I have one sample behind me that I've already completed. Now I put this together using the Social line from Ruby Star Society and this amazing hot pink Kona cotton. But today I'm going to make another version using Pinkerville from Tula Pink. This pattern calls for about half a jelly roll, about 20 strips. So you can use a junior jelly roll that has 20 strips, or you can use a large jelly roll and just edit out repeat fabrics or pick out your 20 favorite. Maybe you want to just use the pink and yellow family or just the green and purple family. It's totally up to you. In addition to the jelly roll, you'll need about 1.5 yards of background fabric. It's a little less, it's actually about 46 inches, 44 to 46 inches. The first thing you're going to do is cut your background fabric, and this is, I promise, the trickiest part of this quilt. You are going to open up your 44 inches of background fabric and fold it on the diagonal so that you have a very large triangle, and cut along the fold line so that you have one very large triangle to work with. And then the other triangle, you're going to fold the other way and cut that apart. So there is a diagram in the pattern, and I'll also put a little diagram right here. It's not hard, it's just kind of bulky to do. I tried filming the process on how to do this, and it just looked like big pieces of fabric being folded swung in front of the camera. So I think the diagram is a lot better. So get your fabric cut into 3 pieces, and then you're ready to sew. I have chosen my favorite 20 strips from my jelly roll, and it was basically just one of each print. I think that got me to 21, and then I just picked my least favorite one and pulled that one out as well to get me down to 20 jelly roll strips. In addition to my 20 jelly roll strips, I also have my large triangle of fabric. So after you cut your background fabric, the only other prep you need to do is to open up your jelly roll strips and establish a straight edge along the straight side. Now, oddly, my Pinkerville jelly roll here is pinked on these short edges, but most are not. Most you're gonna have that little bar of selvage here to trim off, and you're just trying to get rid of the selvage and kind of create a nice clean line in the print so that you can start sewing. So here on this one, you can see a little bit of the selvage here, and what you would do, you can take a rotary cutter or scissors, and I would just cut right along that line so that you have a nice flat established line that doesn't include the selvage. You don't want to sew this into your quilt. Now you can take a few moments and stack your jelly rolls in the order in which you want to sew them. We're going to be assembling these alternating sides, just like a giant chevron. So if you want to plan accordingly, then take a few minutes and just stack your jelly rolls. If you want to have it random, then just start sewing. I think I'm going to sew mine just in the order they came off the jelly roll. So I'm going to start with this kind of pinky unicorn and work my way down. So this is the 90-degree angle of our background fabric here, and I'm going to take my first jelly roll strip and just align it to this long edge. Now because we cut such a large square of fabric from our background, this edge here is going to just about match our jelly roll strip. It is a little bit oversized so that we can trim this down later. We're going to end up with kind of a zigzag along the edge. So everything's just a little oversized so that we can make it as big as possible when we're trimming. Now that I have these aligned, I am going to sew this long edge with a 1/4 inch seam. It might be easier to see in the diagram here. This is my background triangle, and this is my pinky unicorn jelly roll strip. I'm going to sew it straight down that side of the triangle. I'm not going to take the time to pin this. You certainly could if you feel like you get better results that way, but because this is just a long straight seam, I'm just going to line it up as I go. So I'm just lining up the next 4 or 5 inches of the seam. And sewing, and I'll repeat that all the way down this entire jelly roll strip inside of our triangle. using the seam guide as I sew, and this is a really handy thing to have if you do not have one. I know a lot of machines come with a foot that have like a guide built in, but this Juki doesn't. So I bought this little seam guide that screws to the bed of my machine, and I can adjust it to get an accurate seam allowance, and I can just kind of swing it out of the way when I need a little bit more room around the needle. If your machine doesn't have one that will fit this little screw-on adjustable jobby, then there are magnetic seam guides that work with just about any machine. So I highly recommend these. They are super handy. Our first seam is done. Now, you do not have to press in between your jelly roll strips, but I do like to, just to make sure I am keeping my quilt nice and square. You guys know I like to press my seam allowances open, but in this case, there's really no intersecting seams that are going to create a lot of bulk. So I have pressed all of my seam allowances kind of to the jelly roll strip that I just added. Now that I have this jelly roll strip attached and pressed open, it is time to add our next jelly roll strip. And this one is going to be sewn along the other side of our background triangle. So we are going to align it to the corner of our previous jelly roll strip. So right sides together, all the way up in the kind of the new corner of our big triangle. And now I'm going to sew along this long edge. So here it is in the diagram. We have our blue background and the yellow jelly roll strip, and we're adding the red one. At the very end here, our background square was a little oversized, so you do have this kind of hanger-on triangle. And just don't worry about this edge of our quilt, what eventually will become this edge. Even jelly roll strips within the same line will be slightly different, so don't stress too much if they're not lining up exactly, because they probably won't. Now we have our third strip ready to attach, and we are going to attach it next to the first jelly roll strip that we attached. So we are just alternating our way up this quilt as we attach new strips. So I'm going to attach this one here, and then the next one will go here, and we will just alternate our way up our quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and attach all 20 strips in this manner, just alternating up until I have 10 on each side, and then we'll be ready for the next step. It's about an hour later, and all my strips are assembled. I just laddered them all the way up, and now my top looks like this weird kind of arrow shape. And so now we have just 2 seams, and we'll be done with our quilt top. So now that all of our strips are laddered up and we are to this point, it is time to add the 2 triangles that were left over from our background fabric. So I have them here. They are ready to be sewn on. So we are going to sew them to the top of this kind of arrowhead shape to square off the top of our quilt. So just pick one. I like to start on the kind of next side that I would add a jelly roll strip, and you just place it right sides together. So I just align it right sides together. I do overhang it just a little bit so that I have like a full 1/4 inch seam allowance here. And now I'm just going to sew all along this side seam, just like you would one of the jelly roll strips. I'm going to press this big triangle out, and then we'll attach this second triangle. Okay, I've pressed this out, and now we're going to add the second triangle to this edge. Let's find that long side. And again, we'll do right sides together. And I am going to leave just a little bit kind of hanging off the top, just so I'm sure to have a 1/4 inch at the top here. One more seam, guys, and it's all done. It's all done. Let me hang it up and we can look at it. So here we have it. It is all done. That took me, I think, about an hour and 40 minutes all told. So this is about the fastest quilt I think I've ever made. It is super easy, very beginner friendly, and it uses very little fabric for about a 60-inch square quilt. Now, I have not trimmed these edges. You can see they're kind of jagged and uneven. You can trim them now, or you could wait until after it's quilted so that you kind of maintain that really nice square edge of your quilt for your binding. Totally your choice. The PDF download for this pattern is in the description below. It's totally free. You just need to check out on my website, and it's a PDF download. I hope you guys have an amazing Sew a Jelly Roll day, and if you make this quilt, then be sure to tag me on Instagram. I would love to see. Happy quilting! Oh my goodness, these jelly rolls shed all over. What is going on there?